Before we start, just a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. Only 2% are subscribed at 1,000 subscribers. I'll be posting a special video. I heard my wife say she was asexual in therapy today. My name is Ethan and I am 33. When those words hit my ears, everything inside me glitched. I stared at the floor and felt my jaw lock. I knew something in our marriage had just snapped for real. The therapist looked at her and then at me in silence. My wife twisted her wedding ring and waited for someone to speak. I remember thinking this had to be some weird phase label, like a new app she downloaded and wanted to try on us. I also remember my chest hurting in a very real way. "Can you say more about that?" the therapist asked her. My wife pulled in a slow breath and kept her eyes down. "I do not feel sexual attraction to anyone," she answered finally. She said it like a sentence she had rehearsed in the mirror. I felt like I had just been quietly fired from my own life. The therapist asked how long she had felt this way about intimacy. She shrugged and said it had been a long time already. She said this explained why she had been avoiding sex at home. I felt my face burn because now it was evidence on record. Like our dry bed had become an official exhibit on a table. I forced myself to lean back and look calm on purpose. I did not want to be the needy husband in that room. Inside, I kept thinking about the last night we actually touched. Not in detail, just the fact that I could not remember it. That blank space scared me more than the word asexual itself. The therapist turned toward me and asked what I was feeling. I almost laughed because the question felt too small for this. "I feel blindsided," I managed, and my voice came out rough. I said I did not know what this meant for our future. I did not dare say the word divorce out loud yet. My wife looked up quick when I said future like that. Her eyes searched my face as if I had already left. "I still love you," she said, and her voice shook badly. "I just do not want sex, and I do not think I ever will." The space between still love and do not want felt like a cliff. "Ethan, what do you hear when she says that?" the therapist asked. I rubbed my palms on my jeans to stop them from shaking. "I hear that she wants a roommate with shared bills," I said. The words came faster than my filter and landed heavy between us. My wife flinched like I had shoved her across that invisible line. She said I was twisting it and missing the point on purpose. She said she wanted emotional closeness and partnership and stability. She insisted that sex had always been stressful and draining for her. I thought if we fixed the rest, maybe that pressure would fade. Hearing that made every moment we tried feel like a retroactive lie. The therapist stepped in before we blew up right there. They asked her if she had ever said this to me clearly. My wife pressed her fingers to her forehead and shook her head. I could not figure out the words and I was scared. That sentence echoed in my skull and scraped every nerve I had. I know I am not a hero in this story. Sitting there, I was not thinking about her fear at all. I was thinking about the years ahead if I agreed to this. Anniversaries side by side on the couch with a polite half hug. Me dying slowly from touch starvation while everyone else clapped for us. The therapist asked me what I needed in a marriage honestly. The room felt smaller because I already knew my own answer. "I need sexual connection," I said, and my throat tightened hard. "I need to feel wanted, not just respected and organized." The last word sounded pathetic even to me, and my stomach turned. My wife watched me like I had just betrayed some unwritten rule. "You are reducing everything to sex again," she said through her teeth. I told her I was not reducing anything, I was naming it. If I had asked for money or kids, nobody would call me shallow. Some dark part of me wanted her to see me as human, not a demand. The therapist wrote something down, and I hated that pen scratch. They asked both of us if we could imagine a compromise together. My wife nodded quick and said she could do cuddling and kissing. She said maybe sometimes more, but only if I did not expect it. I heard a future full of begging dressed up as patience and kindness. When it was my turn, I froze up for a second. Every answer felt like stepping into a trap I could not see. "If I agree to no sex, I will resent her," I said. "If I push her into sex, she will resent me instead." Both roads ended with two miserable people sleeping back to back. There was a pause long enough for my thoughts to spiral hard. I imagined myself years older, still sitting in that same chair. Same conversation, same knot in my chest, same therapist taking notes. I could almost see another version of me who had stayed quiet. He looked tired and hollow, and I hated him with my whole soul. I looked at my wife again, and she looked hopeful somehow. Like this conversation might finally set her free from constant guilt. I realized she was picturing a marriage where sex just disappeared cleanly. Like turning off a light and never thinking about the switch again. I knew my brain did not work that way and never would. The therapist suggested we take a week and sit with this. They wanted us to notice what feelings came up at home. I already knew what would come up because it was there already. Anger, pressure, and that gnawing sense that I had been tricked. Still, I nodded because I was not ready to blow everything apart. When the session ended, we walked out into the hallway quietly. My wife kept close but did not reach for my hand once. I could feel her wanting reassurance I did not know how to give. I shoved my hands into my pockets so I would not fake anything. My fingers dug into my palms while the word divorce flashed like a sign. At the front desk, they asked who would handle the payment today. My wife looked at me and I took out my card automatically. Signing the receipt felt weirdly like signing some invisible contract. Not for therapy specifically, but for this new sexless reality. My signature shook just enough that I had to grip the pen harder. In the parking lot, she finally spoke again behind the car door. "Thank you for not freaking out in there," she said very softly. "I was terrified you would walk out and never come back." I stared at the steering wheel because looking at her felt dangerous. I had not walked out of the building, but something in me already had. I cannot stay married like this. That is what came out the second we got home. No warm-up, no small talk, no fake smile. She dropped her keys on the counter and froze. I already knew I could not walk that sentence back. She turned slowly like she wanted to rewind the whole evening. "What do you mean like this?" Her voice had that thin edge. I pointed between us with my hand still shaking. "No sex, no desire, no anything physical, that version." Saying it out loud made the air feel heavier somehow. She leaned on the counter like her legs might give out. "We just talked about this in there, can you breathe first?" I laughed once and it sounded ugly even in my own ears. I have been breathing this for months, maybe years actually. That slip scared me because it made the problem sound permanent. She pushed away from the counter and walked to the table. "Sit down please, you are spiraling and I am exhausted." I stayed standing because sitting felt too close to surrender. My heart hammered like I had just started a real fight. Part of me wanted to run upstairs and hide in the shower. She opened a takeout container and stared at it without eating. "You know I love you, that has not changed at all." I came closer and rested my hands on the back of a chair. "Love without touch feels like friendship to me now." The words tasted harsh, yet also painfully accurate in my mouth. She flinched like I had slapped a label on her forehead. "So I am just your buddy now, that is what you think." I shook my head fast because that was not it exactly. "You are my wife who does not want me physically anymore." I watched that land and I hated myself a little for it. She pressed her fingertips to her temples and squeezed her eyes shut. "I am trying to be honest and you are punishing me." That line hit something guilty deep inside my chest. I knew there was truth there and it still did not fix anything. Honesty did not magically refill whatever had dried up between us. She looked up again and her eyes were wet but steady. "Everything else works, we talk, we get things done together. We can still cuddle and kiss, we can still be close." She sounded like she was offering a compromise from a script. I pictured myself nodding now, then slowly dying inside her plan. "You are asking me to cut off a whole part of myself." My hand found a glass on the table and gripped it hard. "If I agree now, I will resent you more every month. I will become someone you cannot even stand to look at." That was the first moment I realized how dark this could get. Her jaw clenched and her shoulders went rigid against the chair. "So the only thing that matters to you is sex then?" I slammed the glass down and water sloshed over the edge. "Stop reducing it to that, it is not just friction." I heard my own voice echo and knew I sounded desperate. I dragged the chair out and finally sat across from her. "When you picture us in 10 years, what do you see?" She stared at the table and picked at a napkin. "I see us raising kids maybe, working, traveling, laughing here." She paused long enough that I knew the missing piece on purpose. "You did not mention intimacy once," I pointed out quietly. "I did not forget it by accident, it just is not in me." How do you not get that? She looked almost angry now. I am not broken, this is how I am wired inside. That last line sounded rehearsed like something she had read online. I rubbed my face with both hands to slow my thought. OHDS. So what happens to my wiring in this fantasy future? Do I just turn it off and clap for your progress? Do I live on hugs while pretending I am fine forever? The idea of decades like that made my stomach twist painfully. She pushed her chair back and stood up fast. You could watch stuff by yourself, a lot of people do that. You could handle that side alone and we stay solid otherwise. She looked proud of that solution like she had nailed the puzzle. I stared at her because I honestly could not believe that suggestion. So I am supposed to sneak off and handle needs privately forever, while my own wife will not even consider touching me. That does not sound like a marriage, that sounds like roommates. The word roommates dropped between us like a heavy block. Her shoulders sagged because she knew exactly what I meant. She wrapped her arms around herself like she had gotten cold. I am offering you everything I have without pushing myself into trauma. The word trauma knocked the air out of me for a second. I had not thought of myself as someone who caused that. Now I was wondering how many nights she had forced herself through. I stood as well because sitting made me feel cornered and small. If being with me physically leaves you traumatized, why are we here? Why did we get married if this was always inside you? Her mouth opened, then closed like she did not know where to start. I realized I was not just hurt, I was starting to feel conned. That is not fair, she whispered, and her hands shook slightly. I did not have the language for this back then at all. I thought maybe it would change or fade or whatever over time. So I tried to push that part down because I wanted us. Hearing that did not bring comfort, it just made the timeline worse. I walked to the sink and turned the faucet on too hard. The sound gave me a second to breathe without words. I cannot be the experiment you use to see if it changes. I am a person, not a test run for your orientation. My reflection in the dark window looked like someone I did not recognize. She came closer but stopped a few feet behind me. If you leave over this, you will regret it later. You are throwing away a good partnership for something physical. I shut off the water and turned around slowly to face her. That something physical is the difference between a partner and a friend. For a moment, we just stared at each other across that short distance. I think we both felt something closing in the space between us. She took a breath like she might change course and meet me halfway. What came out instead pushed everything over the edge completely. If you really loved me, you would accept me like this fully. That line lit every fuse I had left. Do not throw that at me, that is not love, that is surrender. If accepting you means erasing myself, that is not a compromise. My heart hammered so hard I could hear it in my ears. I knew exactly what word was walking up my throat next. She must have seen it on my face because hers went pale. Please do not say what I think you are about to say. Her hands reached out a little, then dropped back to her sides. For a second I almost swallowed the word just to keep the peace. Then I pictured that older, hollow version of me again, and I could not. I am thinking about divorce, I said, and the room snapped quiet. The word hung there like some loaded thing between us. Her eyes went wide and her breathing turned shallow and fast. I could feel the glass still in my grip press into my palm. The rim tapped my teeth when I tried to drink because my hands shook. You cannot be serious, she managed after what felt like forever. You want to end our whole life because I do not want sex. There it was again, reduced to a single act like I was a cliché. I want a marriage that includes desire and touch and mutual attraction. I do not think that is insane to ask from a spouse. She laughed once and the sound cracked right down the middle. You would rather blow up everything than explore any other option. Open relationships, separate bedrooms, therapy focused on this only. Anything but throwing me away over something I cannot control. Each suggestion felt like a different way of telling me to disappear. An open relationship turns me into the guy who cheats with permission. Separate bedrooms turn this place into a shared lease. Therapy cannot manufacture attraction where there is none at all. I could hear how harsh that entire list sounded out loud. Still, every piece of it felt painfully honest in that moment. She backed up until her shoulders hit the wall behind her. I cannot do divorce, I do not believe in it the way you do. My parents would lose it, our friends would pick sides immediately. I would be the one everyone blamed for breaking a stable thing. Her fear spilled out fast, and for once it did not move me. In that kitchen, I realized we were clinging to totally different fears. She was terrified of the social fallout and being the villain. I was terrified of staying and turning into someone bitter and cruel. No choice felt clean, and every road looked like a wreck. I stared at her and knew this conversation had just drawn a line. We are not deciding tonight, I finally forced myself to say. If I spoke to a lawyer tomorrow, it would be from this place. Angry, panicked, ready to hurt you back for hurting me. I set the glass down before I dropped it on the floor. Even so, my fingers trembled like they were already letting go of us. She nodded slowly, but there was no relief in her expression. You opened the door by saying that word out loud tonight. Even if you do nothing, it is in the room now always. She was right, and we both knew it without arguing. The rest of the evening passed in silence, with divorce sitting between us like a third person. The email from the attorney landed while we were eating dinner. I saw the subject line and my stomach lurched hard. Initial divorce packet attached, that was the exact phrase staring back. I set my fork down and pushed the plate away too fast. She watched my face change before she saw the screen. Is that from the lawyer? Her voice went quieter than normal. I turned the laptop so she could read it herself. For a moment, we both just stared at the subject line. This is what we talked about, and this is the next step. My throat felt tight while I said it, but I kept going. She folded her arms like she was freezing, even though she was not. Open it then, let us see what blowing everything up looks like. There was that sarcasm again, but under it I heard fear. I clicked the file and watched the pages load line by line. Every new page felt like a nail going into something important. We scrolled in silence through legal words and empty signature spaces. There were sections on assets and debts and future plans. Seeing our life smashed into bullets made me feel weirdly detached. This is just a draft, I finally managed, my voice rough. We can adjust anything that feels wrong before anyone files. She pointed at the line that called us husband and wife currently. So once we sign this, we stop being that officially. I nodded because there was nothing clever to add there. Her eyes shone, but she did not let tears fall. Fine, then we keep it simple and fair and quick. Honestly, that surprised me, and I hate that it did. So you agree we go through with this, no more bargaining? She stared at the screen like it might bite her. You already said you cannot stay, I am not going to beg. The way she said it made me wonder if that was true. We spent the next hour talking numbers instead of feelings. How to split the checking account, what to do with the car. Whose name stayed on which bill, little practical landmines. She answered every question calmly, even made a few suggestions. It felt like we were planning a project, not ending a marriage. When the call from the attorney came the next afternoon, I answered. He walked me through the document while I paced the hallway. We can file uncontested if both parties sign this version. That phrase uncontested hit me like a tiny mercy in a storm. Send it for her review, we are on the same page. I believed that when I said it, that is the wild part. After we hung up, I forwarded everything to her inbox. I stood in the doorway while she opened the email on her phone. Her mouth tightened when she saw the PDF icon appear. Guess this is really happening now, she muttered, eyes still down. That night she came into our bedroom carrying her pillow and a blanket. She did not make eye contact, just stood near the doorway. I will sleep in the guest room from now on. My chest squeezed at the same time my shoulders loosened. Are you sure? I asked, even though the answer was obvious. It makes sense, we are not really a couple in that way. She sounded like she had rehearsed that line all day long. She walked to her side of the bed and grabbed a few things. Her wedding band stayed on her hand while everything else moved. I watched that little detail and felt something twist inside me. She paused before leaving and glanced at the dresser. Do you want me to take off the ring too? The question came out too casual, like she was testing me. I stared at her hand and felt my pulse spike. Wear whatever you want, the papers matter more than jewelry. She nodded once and walked out with her pillow hugged tight. When I heard the guest room door close, my chest echoed. That first night alone in our bed, I did not sleep much. Every small creak sounded like footsteps coming back toward me. They never came, and the empty side of the bed felt final. Over the next few days, we turned into oddly polite strangers. We still shared the kitchen and the couch and the mail. We talked about schedules, groceries, small stuff that died safe. Every time my phone buzzed, I half expected her to back out. Instead, she only asked once whether I had signed my pages. I will sign after we go through them together thoroughly. We sat at the table with printed copies spread out. She read each section slowly, lips moving while she tracked lines. Okay, this is fine, that works, we can keep this account. She never said the word divorce while we checked those boxes. When we reached the signature section, she put the pen down. You go first, she said, eyes on the final page. My hand shook a little as I wrote my name. It felt like drawing a line through every holiday and plan. I slid the stack toward her when I finished, heart pounding. She held the pen between her fingers for a long moment. It feels wrong to sign without someone official watching us. I knew it was stalling, but I did not push yet. We can sign now and notarize later, that is common. She tapped the paper with the pen tip and inhaled sharply. I will look over it again tomorrow with a clear head. She stood up before I could answer and carried the forms away. I watched her walk back to the hall like nothing urgent happened. Something in my gut said that was the first crack in her agreement. I did not listen to it as hard as I should have. The next evening, I found the packet still untouched on her desk. Same spot, same angle, my signature sitting alone at the bottom. You did not review it again, I pointed out, leaning in the doorway. She closed her laptop half an inch and glanced at the papers. I skimmed them earlier at lunch, I just need more time. How much more time can you possibly need for 10 pages? I heard the annoyance in my voice and did not soften it. We already went over every line side by side yesterday. She twisted a pen cap between her fingers until it bent. I am trying not to freak out, that is taking some effort. There it was, the panic under all her reasonable talk. I told you I am not changing my mind about ending this. I am just trying to do it clean without dragging things out. She stared at me like I had insulted her somehow. You act like I am the only one dragging anything here. 2 more days passed and nothing moved on the legal front. We kept orbiting each other in the house like nervous satellites. I noticed she still wore her ring every single day. She still introduced me as her husband on the phone sometimes. Each small choice felt like it pulled in the opposite direction. On the 4th day, the attorney emailed asking about her signature. I read the message twice, heat rising in my face. Checking in on the executed documents, want to keep momentum. That word momentum almost made me laugh from frustration. I forwarded the email to her with no comment, hands tight. She came into the living room 10 minutes later, phone in hand. You told him I was on board already, did you? I muted the show I was pretending to watch and looked up. You were on board, we planned everything together last week. Did something change that you have not actually said out loud? She dropped onto the edge of the couch and stared ahead. I thought agreeing in theory would feel different than this. I thought I would feel relief or freedom or something good. Instead, I just feel like I am helping destroy my own life. There was no way to answer that without being the villain. You cannot want me as a husband and refuse intimacy forever. The words came out slow because I was tired of this loop. We already tried that setup, I am not doing round 2. She rubbed her forehead with the heel of her hand hard. You make it sound so simple, it is not simple for me. It is not simple for me either, that is the point. Signing hurts, not signing keeps us stuck in something broken. She turned and finally looked directly at me. If I sign, it becomes real for everyone, not just us. And I am not ready to face that fallout yet. There it was, the real anchor holding her in place. She was terrified of the story people would tell about this. People will talk no matter what we do with this marriage. I have to live inside this house every day meanwhile. I spread my hands because every argument felt recycled and useless. So you're refusing to sign now, I asked, needing clarity. She hesitated just long enough to set my teeth on edge. I am not saying never, I am saying not yet. I need time to adjust before I put my name on that. Every word sounded like a door closing in slow motion. You already had time before we involved a lawyer at all. I do not want to drag this through months of limbo. She bit her lip and looked away toward the hallway. What are you going to do if I just wait, she asked. The fact she framed it that way told me everything. In that moment, I realized we were playing different games. I thought we were walking one painful road to the end. She was hoping the road would loop back to the start. She wanted the threat of divorce without the final stamp. She wanted me uncomfortable enough to compromise on what I needed. I will talk to the attorney about options without your signature. The sentence scared me even as I spoke it out loud. Her head snapped back toward me like I had struck her. You would go around me on this after everything. You would make me the abandoned wife in every version of this story. I am not going around you, I am moving forward anyway. I cannot force you to sign, but you do not control my life. She stood abruptly and the couch cushion bounced under her weight. You are choosing the most aggressive path every single time. If you do this, I do not know how we stay civil. That line stunned me because she said it like we were fine now. We were two people in separate rooms, sharing nothing but utilities. Yet in her mind, we still counted as some kind of team. I watched her walk away again, ring flashing once as she moved. The unsigned papers on her desk felt heavier than any ring. That night I lay awake staring at the ceiling, counting breaths. I could hear a faint sound from the guest room down the hall. Drawer opening, bed creaking, someone else also not sleeping. I thought about the version of me who accepted stalemate forever. The idea of becoming that man scared me more than any judge. So yeah, she agreed to end things in theory and even helped plan. But when the ink needed to hit paper, she froze and dug in. She wanted credit for being reasonable without paying the cost. And I was suddenly stuck between a stalled marriage and a stalled escape. That was the night I started to understand what trapped really feels like. The first bottle rolled out when I yanked the bathroom drawer. It hit my foot, bounced once, and rattled to a stop. I bent down, picked it up, and felt my pulse jump. Her name, a pharmacy label, a medication I had never heard. That tiny thing in my hand felt louder than any argument. I set it on the counter and pulled the drawer all the way. Two more containers lay behind her hairbrush, half buried. Different names, different dosages, refill dates stretching back. I twisted one open and stared at the pale tablets inside. My head started doing that fast math of what else I had missed. Everything okay in there? Her voice floated from the hallway. Yeah, just looking for my razor, I called back automatically. My fingers closed around the bottles before I could stop. By the time she stepped into the doorway, I had them lined up. Her eyes dropped to the counter and her whole posture shifted. You went through my stuff again. Not shouted, just flat, like we had done this before. I was grabbing my razor and one fell out of the drawer. I tapped the nearest container with one finger. How long have you been on these without telling me? She leaned against the doorframe and crossed her arms tight. That is personal medical information, I do not have to broadcast it. I picked up the one with the oldest date and turned it. You do when it clearly affects our marriage daily. Antidepressant, anti-anxiety, hormone something, what else am I missing? Her jaw flexed and she stared at the floor. Put them down, you are not my doctor. I laughed once because the defensiveness hit me wrong. No, I am just the guy you married who thought we were honest. These started 2 years ago, that is what the label says. She stepped forward fast and tried to grab them from me. I moved my hand out of reach on instinct. Why did you hide these? I asked, keeping my voice low. You store them under a hairbrush like contraband. Were you planning to tell me after the divorce went through? That is not fair, she snapped and then caught herself. She pulled back, exhaled slowly, and tried again. I did not hide them for fun, I hid them because of you. Those words stung way more than I wanted to admit. Congrats, now you really have my attention. She perched on the edge of the tub and rubbed her knees. I started those after I realized sex kept making me panic. The doctor called it anxiety and hormonal imbalance and whatever else. They help me function, they do not magically make me want intimacy. Her eyes flicked up to check my reaction, then dropped again. If they help you function, why did you never mention them once? I heard the bite in my tone and did not dial it back. You talk to a stranger with a prescription pad but not your husband. One of these is from before our last anniversary trip. I remembered that night now and my stomach rolled hard. She dragged both hands through her hair and let out a rough breath. I did not tell you because you already blamed yourself for everything. If I said I needed pills on top of therapy, you would implode. I thought I could handle it privately and spare you more guilt. Funny how mercy can feel like someone rewriting your life without you. Did you take these before we were intimate back then? The question came out quieter than I expected. She hesitated long enough that I already knew the answer. Sometimes, when I knew you wanted more and I felt like shutting down. So I would swallow one and try to get through the night. There it was, the crack that sent old memories tumbling. Nights I thought she was just shy or tired or reserved. Her stillness, the way she stared at the ceiling after. All of it looked different with those bottles on the counter. I gripped the edge of the sink to stop my hands from shaking. So while I was thinking we were connecting, you were medicating through it. The words tasted sour and dramatic, but they were true. She winced and pressed her palms together between her knees. I was trying to be a good partner in the only way I knew. I figured I just needed help relaxing and it would get easier. I asked you 100 times if something felt off for you. You looked me in the eye and told me everything was fine. That is not just private coping, that is straight up lying. My reflection behind her looked like someone who had aged 10 years. I hated that guy and felt sorry for him at the same time. She lifted her head and met my eyes directly. I lied because the truth scared me more than you did. If I said, hey, I feel nothing during sex, what would you do? You probably would have left me on the spot back then. Hearing that hurt because I could not promise she was wrong. I set the bottles down one by one, not gently. So when you call yourself asexual now, this is not new. You have been battling this inside your head since before we married. You walked into that ceremony knowing something huge and never disclosed it. I heard my voice rising and forced it back down hard. Her shoulders slumped like the fight just leaked out of her. I knew I did not feel what other people talked about. I thought maybe I was prudish or slow or weirdly late. I did not have a word for it then, just dread. So I told myself love would flip some switch eventually. Except it did not, and you let me believe I was enough anyway. I sounded bitter and small, and I am not proud of that. You let me think therapy would fix communication, not orientation. You handed me homework and exercises while hiding this entire iceberg. That last word slipped out before I remembered I hate dramatic metaphors. Her mouth lifted in a humorless, almost smile. You were not supposed to be a test run, you were the dream. I wanted the house, the jokes, the daily routine with you. I just hoped the sex piece would fall into place with time. When it did not, I thought medication might smooth out the edges. Did the pills ever actually make you want me? I needed the answer even though I knew it would cut. She blinked slowly, thinking, and finally shook her head. They made it easier to tolerate, not easier to crave. So I could show up without crying in the bathroom first. That one sentence punched straight through whatever defenses I had. I pictured her alone behind a locked door, swallowing medication and forcing smiles. My anger flickered for a second, replaced by something heavier. Pity, maybe, grief, hard to separate them in that moment. Then it swung right back into fury at how long this had stayed hidden. You realize what you are admitting here, right? You are saying our entire sexual history was you gritting your teeth. You are rewriting every moment as something you endured for my sake. That makes me feel like a creep even in memories that felt mutual. My chest felt tight and my hands would not stay still. She stood and stepped closer, eyes glossy but stubborn. I am telling you how it felt for me, not judging you. You are not a predator, you never forced me once. I agreed every time, I just agreed while wishing I did not have to. That distinction might sound important in theory, but it burned in practice. I stepped back because her closeness made it harder to think. So where does trauma fit into all this, because you kept using that word? Her gaze snapped away to the tile by my feet. Something happened to me years before you and it warped everything. I opened my mouth to ask what, then shut it again hard. I am not proud of what went through my head there. Part of me wanted every grim detail laid out in front of us. Like a ledger that would explain why she could not touch me now. Another part wanted to plug my ears and reject any context. Because context starts to sound like a reason to stay and suffer. She seemed to sense that war inside me and held up a hand. I did not tell you then because I barely understood it myself. I finally named it in solo therapy last year, not before. Once I did, sex with anyone started to feel impossible, not just you. The medication was supposed to keep my brain from exploding daily. So when did you land on the Word asexual exactly. The night in therapy was not the first time you thought it. She swallowed, throat working, and answered after a long pause. I started using it for myself a few months ago quietly. I was scared to say it out loud to you because it sounded final. Final is the point, I snapped, then closed my eyes briefly. I took a breath and tried again with less heat. You held that label privately while we were still trying in bed. You let me believe we were just working through a rough patch. That is what I cannot get past, the private timeline in your head. She wiped her cheeks with the back of her hand impatiently. I was terrified that if I named it, you would leave instantly. I thought if I eased you into the idea, you might adapt. First less sex, then therapy, then the word, step by step. By the time it came out, maybe you would already be halfway there. Halfway where? That is what screamed in my brain. Halfway to a marriage where I never touched my own wife again. Halfway to pretending my desire was a bad habit to manage. She had been playing chess with my life, one cautious move at a time. Meanwhile, I thought we were just talking about communication exercises. I do not know how to trust anything you say now. It came out softer than I felt, and that scared me. This is not just about you not wanting sex anymore. This is about you editing the story while I lived inside it. I picked up one bottle, read the label, and set it down hard. She winced at the sound and folded in on herself a little. What do you want from me here? A confession and apology both. I looked at her and saw someone miserable and cornered. I also saw the person who had kept me in the dark for years. Those two images did not cancel each other out like she hoped. At minimum, I want you to stop talking like this came out of nowhere. You did not wake up and discover you were asexual last week suddenly. You knew something was off way before vows and rings and furniture. If you had told me then, I could have chosen a different life. That is the part that makes me feel sick when I look at you. She swallowed hard and nodded once, eyes shiny. You are right about that piece. I should have spoken up sooner. I wish I could go back and fix that, I really do. Her voice cracked on the last word and it almost got me. Almost, because I know sorry does not rebuild years of erased consent. We stood there in cramped silence, 3 bottles between us. I could hear the faint buzz of my phone in the bedroom. Probably another email from the attorney waiting for an update. I suddenly understood that our problem was bigger than mismatched drives. We were not just sexually incompatible, we were operating on different realities. That realization settled in my gut like a stone. Orientation I could maybe respect from a distance. Living with someone who could rewrite history that cleanly. That felt dangerous in a way I had not named before. I walked out of the bathroom knowing this secret had pushed us past any easy return. You need to understand, a judge will not care about sex. That was the first thing the attorney told me on our call. I sat in my car outside his office, knuckles tight on the wheel. So what does a judge care about then? I asked, voice low. Money, logistics, paperwork, he answered like it was obvious. Can I file even if she will not sign anything? Yes, but it gets more expensive and takes longer, he replied. You can still claim breakdown of the marriage on your side. I stared at the dashboard and felt my jaw clench. I was about to pay a stranger to make me the bad guy officially. Look, he continued, papers rustling faintly through the phone. Plenty of couples divorce over intimacy problems, you are not unique. Courts do not care who wanted what in the bedroom though. Focus on what you want your life to look like after. That last line hit hard because I did not have an answer. After the call I texted my friend Marcus, the blunt one. Need to talk, marriage stuff, not a joke. He replied in seconds, told me to meet him at a bar. By the time I got there my heart was pounding again. I ordered a drink and launched straight into the mess. She came out as asexual, wants to stay married without sex. She hid therapy, meds, and trauma history for years beforehand. I asked for divorce, now she's stalling and playing for time. Marcus listened without interrupting, just drummed his fingers on the table. When I finished, he let out a long, slow breath. You are not crazy for wanting sex in your marriage. He said it like he was reading a label on a box. You and her want different things, and that is a real problem. So why are you talking like you are already guilty of a crime? I stared at the condensation on my glass, avoiding his eyes. Because she is waving trauma, meds, orientation in front of me. And I am standing there, saying cool, I still want to leave. It feels like I am stepping on someone already on the ground. Marcus shook his head and leaned back in his chair. That is empathy, not proof you are the villain here. He pointed his chin at me, eyebrows pulled together. Flip it for a second, imagine she wanted sex and you did not. She begged and begged, therapy did nothing, years passed. Would people call her cruel for walking away at that point? I opened my mouth, then shut it again because I knew the answer. They would say she deserved to feel wanted by her partner. Same way you deserve that, even if internet strangers disagree. He took a sip from his drink and watched my reaction. You tried therapy, you talked, you did not run to cheat night one. If you stay now, you will rot from the inside out. I wanted to believe him, honestly I did. But another voice in my head was already arguing back. You are missing the orientation piece, I said, rubbing my neck. If she truly cannot feel attraction, she is not choosing this. Who walks out on someone for something they cannot control? Marcus tilted his head like he was weighing each word. Plenty of people leave partners over things that are not choices. Infertility, illness, addiction with no progress, it all happens. That does not make them monsters by default, just human and limited. You are allowed to say this version does not work for you. That made sense on paper, it just did not sink in. I drained my glass and checked my phone under the table. A new message from my friend Jenna sat on the screen. She knew about the situation from a shorter version I had sent. Her text preview already made my stomach drop. So you are divorcing her because she will not perform for you. I shoved the phone back into my pocket, pulse jumping. Marcus watched me and frowned. People giving you grief already, he asked, reading my face. Yeah, one friend basically called me a selfish jerk in one line. Stop crowdsourcing your morals to people who do not live with her. He slapped a palm lightly on the table for emphasis. You and your wife are the only ones in that house. Everyone else gets to leave when the conversation ends. That part was impossible to argue with, even for my anxious brain. On the drive back home, my chest felt wired and twitchy. I kept hearing two sentences on repeat, fighting in my head. You deserve sexual connection. She cannot give it without hurting herself. By the time I pulled into the driveway, my hands were sweating. I sat there gripping the wheel until my breathing slowed. Inside, she sat on the couch with her laptop open. She glanced up when I walked in, eyes tired but alert. How was your meeting with the lawyer guy, she asked. I kicked off my shoes and stayed by the doorway. He explained how to move forward without your signature if needed. Her fingers froze on the keyboard, then began to tap again. So you are really going to force this through court? I am going to complete something we already started together. I will not sit in limbo until you feel brave enough for fallout. Her mouth tightened, but she closed the laptop and faced me fully. I spent the afternoon reading about mixed orientation marriages. She tucked her legs under her, watching my reaction closely. There are couples who make it work without sex at all. They live together, share bills, share chores, just no pressure physically. Her voice softened like she was offering a compromise made of gold. Do they both agree to that setup from the start, I asked. Or does one of them get dragged there like I am now? She rolled her eyes a little, then checked herself. Not everyone experiences touch as central like you do. You could get that need met alone and keep everything else here. Do you hear yourself when you say that? I asked quietly. You are asking me to cut out an entire piece of partnership. And applaud you for letting me watch porn instead of leaving. She flinched at the word, then crossed her arms. I am trying to keep our life intact without hurting you on purpose. You admitting sex feels like trauma already hurts me, whether you intend it. Staying married while you refuse my body every time will rip me apart. If I go outside the marriage, I betray you and myself. Where exactly is the option where I do not break in some way? Her answer was one long, slow exhale as she stared past me. If you leave, I lose health insurance, stability, all of it. My parents will call me broken, my friends will take your side. They will hear you say I hate sex and think I tricked you. I am asking you to consider a version where we both lose less. She was bargaining with practical chips while I bled out emotionally. I did not answer right away. I walked to the kitchen. I filled a glass with water just to have something to do. Behind me, I heard the couch springs creak when she stood. Can we at least try a platonic marriage for a year, she asked. Give it time, see if it feels less painful than you imagine. I turned around, glass halfway to my lips. So your plan is to hope I get used to being untouched. She shrugged one shoulder, eyes glossy but determined. People adjust to all kinds of grief, this is just a different kind. Her words made my skin crawl in a way I cannot fully explain. That night after she went to the guest room, I grabbed my phone. I opened a browser and typed in asexual marriage no sex. Dozens of forum threads popped up, some with titles that stung. Husband wants sex, I do not need advice. Wife came out as ace, scared of losing him. I clicked on a thread from an asexual person with a married partner. They wrote about feeling broken, forcing themselves, dissociating during sex. They called their spouse loving and patient, still it sounded brutal. At the end, they said if their partner left, they would understand. I sat there rereading that line, heart pounding in my ears. Another post was from the sexual partner in the pair. They talked about missing touch like missing air. They loved their ace spouse deeply, yet felt constantly rejected. They stayed anyway, and their writing dripped with quiet rage. I recognized pieces of myself in every sentence, and it scared me. I backed out of the forums and opened a different site. Search bar, question, are you a bad person for divorcing over incompatibility? Article after article gave neutral answers about values and needs. None of them told me what to do with this specific mess. None of them made me feel less like the villain in my own story. My phone buzzed with a new message from Jenna again. Still up thinking about what you told me. I hesitated, then opened it. If you bail on your wife when she is healing from trauma, that is cruel. You could stay, support her, and work on yourself instead. I stared at that text for a long time. I thought about the pills, the hidden history, the quiet bathroom tears. I also thought about my body going untouched for decades. I typed a reply slowly, thumbs shaking over the screen. If I stay and turn resentful, is that really kinder than leaving? 3 dots pulsed, then vanished, then pulsed again. Finally, her answer came through. Maybe resentment is your own issue to solve, not hers. Therapy is there for that. Divorce does not fix your attachment patterns. I locked the phone, suddenly nauseous. Here is the part where I admit something uncomfortable. Reading asexual folks describe their lives made me feel more sympathetic. Reading people like Jenna scold me made me want to dig in harder. It was like being tugged in 2 directions by invisible ropes. One side called me selfish, the other side begged me not to disappear. The next day, back in therapy, our counselor asked for updates. I talked about the bottles, the hidden orientation timeline, the stalled paperwork. I mentioned her idea of staying married as roommates with rings. I feel like I am choosing between her survival and my sanity. The therapist watched us both, then leaned forward slightly. To be clear, a mixed orientation marriage can work only if both agree. Not if one person feels coerced by guilt or pressure. That goes for both of you, not just him. My wife's eyes snapped toward the therapist at that last part. She looked almost betrayed, like the neutral party had switched teams. So you think he is justified walking out? She asked tightly. I think he is allowed to decide this does not match his needs. Just like you are allowed to refuse sex that feels harmful. The therapist folded their hands, gaze steady between us. Neither of you is obligated to live a life that feels unbearable. That word unbearable hung in the air between our chairs. I realized we had each been treating our own line as the only one. Her limit was sexual contact, mine was permanent celibacy with a spouse. Anything beyond those lines felt like self-betrayal for each of us. There was no magic compromise living in the middle of that. Driving home after that session, the road blurred a little. My brain pinged between Marcus, Jenna, the forums, the attorney. Everyone with their tidy angles, their clear opinions, their fixed stances. Yet none of them had to lie down each night in my bed. None of them had to face her parents, her tears, my mirror. By the time we pulled into the driveway, my head throbbed. She unbuckled her seatbelt and sat still, staring at the windshield. If you go through with this, I will never forgive you fully. Her voice was calm and that almost hurt worse than shouting. But if you stay and keep resenting me, I will never forgive myself. There it was, the real shape of our options finally spoken. Either way, someone would carry a permanent scar from this choice. Maybe both of us would in different ways on different timelines. I stared at the front door and felt my chest tighten. For the first time, I wondered if there was any version where I walked away still recognizing myself. I turned in the papers. That is how the last fight started. I dropped the envelope on the table between us. My hands were steady for once, which scared me a little. She looked from the envelope to my face like she misheard. You actually filed. Not a question, more like a slow realization. Yes, the court has them, the process is started. I kept my voice flat because emotion always derailed us. Inside, everything was shaking hard enough to blur the room. You went ahead without my consent. She moved closer, shoulders tight, eyes locked on me. You said we would talk again before you did anything. We have done nothing but talk for weeks and months. At some point, talk turns into stalling and I cannot stay there. She snatched up the envelope and stared at the stamp. This piece of paper means you want out no matter what. It means I am done arguing about whether I am allowed out. I heard how harsh that sounded and did not fix it. Kindness always pulled me back into negotiations I could not survive. You are abandoning your wife because she is asexual and traumatized. Her voice rose, then cracked, then rose again. You are proving every fear I ever had about telling you. You are making my worst nightmares look rational and deserved. She pressed the envelope against her chest like a shield. I am leaving because you want a marriage without physical closeness. I cannot live in that structure and still recognize myself. This is not punishment for your orientation or history. It is me accepting that I am not built for this. Saying that out loud felt like jumping without seeing the ground. She laughed, sharp and miserable, and paced around the table. You could learn to be okay, people adapt all the time. You did not even try the roommate version of us for a year. You went straight to paperwork because sex matters that much. Her hands carved angry lines in the air while she spoke. We already lived the roommate version before you named anything. Separate beds, awkward avoidance, hugs that felt like pity. I know exactly how it feels, I was there too. My heart pounded, but my words finally matched my reality. I could see that truth hit her and she hated it. You promised to love me for better and worse. She jabbed a finger toward the ring on her hand. What is this if not worse? Why does your promise stop now? I never promised to live in permanent deprivation pretending it is fine. I did not understand what you were carrying when I said those words. She stopped pacing and stared at me, breathing quick. So my trauma and orientation are just inconveniences to you. That is what this looks like from where I stand. You get frustrated, so you flip the table and walk away. Her eyes were bright and wild and full of accusation. I am not walking away because I got irritated. I am walking away because I will turn cruel if I stay. I can already feel that version of me growing inside. The one who counts touches, resents every flinch, keeps score endlessly. I refuse to become that man and take you down with me. For a second, everything went quiet between us. She swallowed and lowered the envelope back to the table. You would rather let strangers think I tricked you. You will let my family believe I drove you out on purpose. You know they will not understand anything about sexuality or trauma. I cannot base my life on how other people spin it. I am already the villain in someone's story no matter what. If I stay, I am the man who resented his asexual wife. If I go, I am the man who divorced the hurting partner. Either way, I carry a label and still have to live. She stepped closer until we were almost touching. If you file and finish this, you kill something in me. I will never date again, I will never trust anyone again. You will confirm that people like me are undateable by default. Her voice dropped to a whisper on that last word. You might never date again even if I stay. You just said you feel no attraction to anyone at all. Keeping me around will not magically change that baseline for you. All it does is give you company while I slowly shut down. I hated how logical that sounded because it offered no comfort. She reached for my shirt, bunching the fabric near my chest. Please, I am begging you, do not do this. We can sleep in separate rooms and still share a life. We can keep holidays, inside jokes, mutual support, everything but sex. I am offering you a whole world if you let this go. You are offering me a life where my partner never wants me. Where I always feel slightly gross for even wanting what I want. That is not a world where I thrive or grow. That is a museum, everything preserved, nothing moving forward. Yeah, I know that, Sue. NDS dramatic, but it was honest in my head. She dropped her hands and stepped away like I burned her. So that is it, you choose orgasms over vows, final answer. My jaw clenched so hard my teeth ached. This is not about orgasms, it is about being desired by my spouse. I will not let that need be mocked into something small and dirty. She wiped her face with the heel of her palm. The court will read this as irreconcilable differences. Such a clean phrase for something tearing me apart right now. You will sign, I will contest, and we will both spend money we do not have. Her words came faster as panic took over the anger. You can contest if you need to, that is your right. I am still following through, I am not backing off this time. I already told the attorney to proceed without your cooperation. The paperwork has my signature whether yours is there or not. There was no satisfaction in saying that, just a hollow kind of certainty. She stared at me like she wanted to memorize my face. You will hate yourself in 10 years for this decision. You will look back and see how impatient and selfish you were. You will realize you left a gentle partner for a body you could buy. That last part made my fingers curl into fists at my sides. I might hate myself, that is on future me to handle. What I know today is that staying would destroy me slowly. I cannot trade my current self for a hypothetical future regret. You deserve someone who can love you platonically without resentment. I am not that person, and pretending otherwise is the real cruelty. For the first time, she went completely quiet. No sarcasm, no bargaining, no blaming, just silence. She looked down at her hand, at the band she still wore. I am not taking this off, she said, voice scraped raw. Even if the judge stamps whatever you brought in. I reached for my own ring with numb fingers. The metal slid over my knuckle and came free. It left a pale groove on my skin that looked wrong. I set it on the table beside the envelope gently. Hearing it touch the wood felt louder than any shout we had thrown. She stared at that small circle like it was bleeding. You are really done, she whispered, more to herself than me. There is nothing I can say that pulls you back. Her shoulders sagged and she let out a long, shaking breath. I did not trust my voice, so I did not answer. She picked up the envelope again and clutched it. You will not protect me in your version of this. You will tell people I lied and used you as an experiment. They will not hear that I tried to love you with everything I had. She walked toward the hallway with that last sentence hanging behind her. I will tell the truth as I experienced it, I called after. That you hid major things and I stayed longer than was healthy. That I care about you and still chose to leave. That I am not proud of any part of this, but I am done. The guest room door closed before I could see if she reacted. Later that night, the house felt too quiet to breathe in. I sat on the couch with my laptop open in front of me. The spot on my finger where the ring used to sit kept throbbing. I opened a browser and stared at the empty search bar. Then I typed in one ridiculous sentence. My wife came out as asexual, and that is why we do not smash. I deleted smash, then put it back, then added the rest. So I said divorce, now she is refusing. The title looked childish and blunt and way too close to the bone. Which is exactly why I left it hanging at the top. In the text box I tried to explain everything, then wiped it. Typed a shorter version, then expanded it again in a different order. Every time I painted her as heartless, it felt fake. Every time I made myself look noble, it read like propaganda. I sat there arguing with my own memory while the cursor blinked. Eventually, I wrote it the way I am telling you right now. Messy, biased, full of my own blind spots and shame. I described the therapy session, the orientation, the medications, the stalled signing. I admitted that I still care about her and still left. My fingers trembled when I reached the part about filing anyway. Before hitting post, I hovered over the cancel button. Once this went up, strangers would dissect us like a case study. They would call me heartless or honest or weak or brave. They would project their own marriages onto ours and pass judgment. I almost closed the laptop and kept the story locked in my chest. Instead, I clicked submit and watched the screen refresh. The title appeared with 0 comments under it for the moment. Somewhere down the hall, a floorboard creaked in the guest room. I sat alone on the couch, bare finger throbbing, heart racing. Waiting to see if the internet would tell me I was a monster or finally say what I could not admit to myself.